Cool.
All right. And then Joe, the two of
Yes.
us separately watched Dune Part Two.
Separately. I want to know your opinions about Dune because I've read the book and I really, really like the
So,
book Dune. But I want to know your opinions
as you may
first of
recall,
all.
I like Dune Part One, but it was more like a vibes,
Yeah. Yeah.
cinematography
I
kind of like the story was
you
good,
you and I had like I think the same thought of like the it was really pretty to look at. It was very cool, but like at the
immersive.
same time, like yeah, very immersive. But like at the same time, it's like, and I rewatched Dune Part One before I watched Dune Part Two. It feels like understand like where it's going, right?
Hmm.
Like you're just like okay, I guess that stuff happened, but I'm not really sure the importance of
Yeah,
everything.
stuff happened and it was pretty and cool, and I was immersed.
Yeah,
But like, I
yeah,
probably wouldn't like. It's like a 3.5 or a 4 for me.
yeah.
Before we watched this one, we watched an
Uh
hour
huh.
recap of Dune One and everything that was missing from the book. That was
Yeah.
a very good recap because it got us a lot more invested in the world
Who? Yeah,
and the characters. I even
yeah.
came in like halfway through the recap and I was already like, okay, cool, the Jenna Bezeret, whatever. Yeah, cool, cool.
Yes.
Uh,
Very important. It's
very,
like
very important
yeah,
to get reminded of that. Going
yeah,
into Dune 2, wow, that movie
yeah.
fucking rules. Like, I don't know
It's
what happened. They just sprinkled the sauce all over this one.
Here's the thing. I
I
didn't know if like because obviously Dune is such a huge thing,
yeah.
but I don't know anything about Dune, and I didn't know if these movies were considered good adaptations or bad adaptations.
After the second one, I think they are fucking incredible.
I was
Um,
floored.
it's definitely a package of like if you're going to watch them, you need to watch one and two. I think like just watching one is a disservice. Like you really need to watch both of them. But like the second one really brought
That movie
everything
flew by,
together.
dude. Like, I
Oh
was
yeah,
so engrossed. Like, I don't think I've been that immersed
yeah.
in a, especially like a sci-fi movie in maybe
Hmm.
ever. Like, I was just in there in that desert with them. I don't even know, man. It
The
transported me
one,
to another world.
yeah, literally. One of the first shots that happened that made me go like, oh yes, we're feeling it. Is it's the very beginning and it's the Harkonnen like troopers. I think they're Harkonnen. There might be Sardaukar. Troopers are on the sand. They're like, oh god, sandworms coming, and they start going up the mountain, and they look like fish swimming up over the side of a like coral kind of like reef kind of a
Mm,
thing. And I was just like, ooh, I was just
saucy.
really vibing. Yes. Um,
What's crazy is like the
it,
movie finished and I was like so engrossed. I was like, I couldn't
yeah.
tell you the sequence of events in that movie. It was a very weird feeling where I was like,
Hmm.
it was just a vibe that was in my mind of like I loved like pretty much every moment of that movie.
Yeah. I love the more I think about Dune, the book, the more it like the further it has climbed up my like ranks of books. It's in like my top five now, I think,
Wow.
at this point. I that book to me is it does everything that a sci-fi book should do, and I think people do not understand like this is like one of like the OG sci-fi books that really kind of like made everything take off. But like there's a lot of like small nuanced stuff in its world building and its purposeness that like that I think a lot of people miss. And like I think the first book is absolutely incredible.
Um,
What did you think about Timothy Chalamet and Paul?
in the first movie, you know, fine,
Yeah,
fine for his role.
whatever.
In the second movie, particularly in the second half, like the reason
Yeah.
why they picked Timothy Chalamet comes to like fruition. I think.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
particularly when he uses the Conqueror hockey. Um,
Yes, the voice.
yes, the Conqueror hockey scenes are so good, and
Mhm.
like I don't want to spoil the movie or anything, but it's interesting when he doesn't use it. Like
Mhm.
it's not used on the most important peoples that it should be used because it's not about that. It's the vibe that I got.
Right.
It's like he
Yeah.
needs to be able to take control of this like political situation by his own merit without using the
Mhm.
voice. So when he
Now,
uses it sparingly, it's very effective.
so the one thing that we brought up in our original like discussion that I thought was really lacking in the first movie, but is the center of attention in this movie that I loved is Paul's inner struggle of who he is,
Yes.
right? Of him being Paul and him being the Kizak Heterak
Which
or
is
the
this is a story about a chosen one messiah figure that is kind of talked
Right.
about throughout the galaxy or like the
Well,
universe or whatever by a particular clan.
yeah, saying it's talked about is not is
Is that an understatement?
I wouldn't say an overstatement, but I would actually it's undercutting the politicalness of what that story is, because it's not a natural story. It's something that's been planted and has
Yes.
been cultivated, and I think that is so fucking like
The
interesting to me.
cultivation of the Jenny Bezeret
Oh yeah,
of that myth is so
yeah,
fascinating. Like the way the book
yes,
tackles how a religion is formed in the like
hmm,
the most basic like way to put it is very interesting.
yeah. It was the part of the book that made me go like, oh, Frank Herbert is cooking, and he's cooking so hot. The only place you can cook is Dune itself. Uh, it's and like like that second movie. It made me go like, okay, I'm so glad Dennis Villeneuve, like Dennis, whatever his last name is, like he
Villeneuve.
really Villeneuve, he figured it out. The one thing though is I really wish the princess was in the first movie as a narrator, because
Yeah.
she's in the entirety of the book. And you don't know this, Willard, but like at the beginning of every chapter, you have a segment of her diary
Oh,
before each
this
chapter.
is
So you have, yeah,
Florence Pugh's character.
Florence Pugh.
Yes.
She has a very minor role, but I think she does very well. And like, because she's like this like character that is in that political world that has no power and no control over it. And but she's the one that can see what's happening essentially. And she's kind of like she's kind of weirdly the layman to understanding of like what's going on, I think, and how they kind of like mean to like the higher ups of this world.
Mm.
Um, Man, the scene on the Harkonian planet
Woo!
was fucking awesome.
Fire.
It was like,
Banger alert.
Willard, did you know that
Did I?
entire scene was filmed in a UV camera?
What is that? What does that mean?
It only tracks UV light, like ultraviolet light.
But that so what? Okay. So what does that mean when they were filming it? What did it look
It's
like?
not it it's like they had to do some like makeup effects to like get that. It's not been on a real like a normal camera. It's like a camera that you use to like judge the radiation or like effects of like the sun in like an area.
But it's filmed in
essentially.
a normal like light, like natural lighting scene. But then
Yeah.
the camera gives it the visual effect that we saw.
Yes.
Wow, that's interesting. That's
It's
very
crazy.
creative.
That scene alone is phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
It's and like I was so blown away when I saw it.
That
I was like,
character was not what I expected him to be.
he was great.
He, I thought he was gonna be a lot more meathead. I really liked some of the
Yes.
nuances with that character.
That last scene of them in it was also
Yeah.
like really telling and really cool.
Super good.
Uh, um, I'm trying to think what else there is. As well.
I was just gonna like Paul's like turn is maybe a little fast there, like a little sudden. I think they kind of build up to it. It's something I had to rewatch and like knowing where it goes and see how
So-
they handle it.
The thing about Paul is like, and this is
The
probably
drug
being,
the
like,
drug
put
trip
knowledge.
near the end like is like a big turning
Yeah.
point.
But like I think the whole point being is that like he knows that when he goes south, there's no turning back from like what he has to do. Like that's the
Okay.
whole like
That's him
And so it-
accepting the prophecy.
Yes.
Okay.
and the thing that I want to point out. Well, I don't want to say this because
No.
it spoils a bit, but like the biggest thing I want to say is that Paul Atreides loses. That's the big thing.
But you're gonna say that all wins.
Yes.
Okay.
Paul Muad'Dib wins, if that makes
Gotcha.
sense.
Yo, shout out to
And I think-
Stilgard. Weirdly comic
Yeah.
relief, but great character.
At least I'm not the heap.
I want to. The one thing what I'll close my points off is how
Yeah.
often does a movie come out where the main character's mother is the best character? Because that's how I
Oh.
feel about Jessica. Jessica is so my favorite character of both of these movies. She's fascinating.
Yeah.
God.
She's
And also
great.
Rebecca
What'd you think-
Ferguson, small crush, but also like just as a character is so good.
I also really liked. So Chani's character in the book is very different.
I heard the way that final scene plays out is very different with Shawnee.
I really like the way it ends in the movie more than the book.
Yeah, it seems more agency.
It's
On
more
her
agency, but also like the message is a lot more clear about what's happening at the end there. Whereas
the
when the
book
book
could
came
trick readers into being
Yes.
like, "Hey, that was great." Okay, gotcha.
yeah. Like, and that made him go like, I should make a second book to really clarify the what this means.
Have you
But
read
yeah,
book 2 and 3, Joe?
I've not. I just know what they are because I just, as someone who's in sci-fi, and like it's important. I think it's important to always like look where things are referencing and just get a general idea of like what makes inspiration, so you have an idea of like, oh, this is what like this is kind of building off of. So I haven't read them, but I get the gist of what they're about more or less. And I know one line from book 4 that is very funny. That's about it.
Do you
but
think
I know
we'll get
this...
that main trilogy adapted? Because I would I'm very invested now, so I want to see at least the trilogy adapted into 6 movies.
I think on the positive side, we'll get the second book. I don't know if we'll get the third book. I think the second book is a really good closer to Paul's story.
I see.
Yeah. But that third book is when things start to really kind of like get close to that cliff edge, if you know what I mean.
Our friend Ryan was telling me, because I watched it with him,
Yeah.
That somehow Duncan Idaho from the first movie is like the most important character in the franchise as a whole, and I'm like, how the fuck does that work?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever.
Yeah.
That's a story for another day.
But no, I'm very happy that you really, really like Dune.
Yeah, no, I'm in there now. I'm gonna rewatch the movies at some point.
Oh,
You're cutting out a little bit. Start that again.
And he's gone.
And just like that.
Yeah.
So to wrap up Dune, we had
Yeah.
a bit of technical difficulty.
Yeah.
The second movie might get made.
The second book. But
yeah,
but
sorry.
I'm glad that you really enjoyed it. I'm also glad that you understood the ending of Dune, because there's a lot of people that don't understand the ending of Dune.
I'm a Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul fan.
I
know when things are not as they seem.
Because Dune is shockingly very subtle, with a lot of what's going on.
And maybe maybe it's because everyone knows what kind of story Dune is these days. So maybe I shouldn't pat myself on the back for just like getting it from osmosis.
No, it's just one, but like it's very easily you can misconstrue the ending of that and be like, oh wow, that's a great thing to happen, or like, wow, I cannot believe they would make this kind of story kind of situation.
The movie helps by showing flashes of what could be.
Yeah, I also really like they really showcase how inaccurate
Paul can be.
Yes, because you get those scenes. I'm also going to recommend the book again. I think that book is phenomenal. No! It's one of the best books I've ever read. I highly recommend it, like just to the moon. But yeah.
Counter. I was gonna say something else but also the ending is from what I gathered, there's still positives to this. We'll see how it plays out.
There's a little bit of positives.
The regime was not good, from what I could tell, but
no, but that doesn't mean the next one is as good or better.
Yes.